Donald Trump and Harvey Milei are getting compared a lot, both by the mainstream media and ordinary folks on the internet. So I decided to have a look whether such comparison has any merits. I decided to show you this video first because I think it's kind of good, and then we could discuss the details.
I want to start this by directly acknowledging the tweet that's been going around. There's a clip being shared from a MAGA voice account claiming that Javier Milei cutting poverty in Argentina proves that Trump's policies work worldwide. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of people aren't going to like what I'm about to say. Javier Milei's policies are not Trump's policies, not even close. And the fact that so many people are trying to force that comparison is a perfect example of how broken political discourse has become. Milei comes from a libertarian economic background, not small government conservative, not populist nationalist, but explicitly libertarian and even openly sympathetic to anarcho-capitalism.
Lo que pasa es que soy minarquista de corto plazo y obviamente de largo plazo soy un anarcocapitalista.
Minarquista.
And that's where I'm at. If an American politician talked the way Milei talks about the state, a lot of the same people cheering him right now would call it low-bird nonsense. And that's the problem. People don't actually understand the policies at all. They just respond to the vibe. But let's talk about what Milei has actually done. Milei's entire framework is built around the idea that the state is the problem, not the solution. He ran on and implemented aggressive spending cuts, eliminating entire ministries, slashing subsidies, and reducing the size and scope of the government. Not reforming welfare, cutting it. Not managing inflation, stopping the money printer. And he's explicitly prioritized fiscal balance, even when it was politically painful. That's not a Trump hallmark exactly. Trump has expanded spending. Milei is trying to gut it.
Yeah, okay. So indeed, in this overview, you already see the kind of different. Here I found even the Reason Magazine article which compares Trump to Milei's opponent, Peronists, right? Trump is embracing the same economic populism that destroyed Argentina. Peronism, the one imported Trump likes. Well, probably not exactly accurate, and we'll see why. They explain it in detail here. Aside from his norm-breaking appeal, Milei's approach is far different than Trump's. Milei vowed free market reforms to overturn decades of populist Peronism, a statist ideology that infected Argentina's politics since Juan Domingo Perón won the presidency in 1946. His authoritarian approach has dominated the country's politics for 80 years, with Milei beating Peronists' opponents. By contrast, Trump is overturning America's historical embrace of free markets and free trade. He set himself up as an all-powerful, charismatic leader, inserts the feds deeply into the economy, and expands the reach of police and military forces. Like Perón, he's doing it in the name of the working class. Yeah, that is somewhat accurate. Yeah, as you remember, he constantly is trying to position himself as a defender of American worker, and that's kind of message we heard a lot, in the old left, like previous century leftists. The U.S. Department of State once described Peronism as a vague concept of social justice, in some ways more akin to religion rather than a political movement, which sounds eerily like MAGA. Yeah, I agree. However, the concept of social justice is what we hear more like in the modern left. So it's not exactly accurate. The comparison is not perfect. And they even admitted, yeah, Peronism is more avowedly leftist than Trumpism. But MAGA's right-wing policies sometimes seem indistinguishable from left-wing ones. Yeah, so I asked Grok to make a detailed comparison, but still keep it in kind of brief. So yeah, in broad strokes, Milei pursues radical libertarian shock therapy with deep austerity, deregulation, fiscal surpluses, and market liberalization, to combat chronic crises, hyperinflation, deficit, overregulation. Donald Trump follows economic nationalism with tax cuts, broad deregulation, protectionist tariffs, and targeted spending increases that defense and border security, while deficit and debt rise. Now here, context differs sharply. I agree with AI. It's very important because it's even hard to compare those people right now. Argentina faced hyperinflation and repeated defaults. So could you imagine how bad it is? It's like a failed state. The US has a large, stable economy with moderate inflation and reserve currency status. So US is like far away right now from getting to such a bottom where Argentina is. Milei slashed the state dramatically. Trump emphasized growth with tax relief and tariff of austerity. So yeah, it's like in short, in one paragraph, it's pretty accurate summary. Let's see what it means in terms of concrete policy points. Yeah, Milei inherited high debt and really bad situation. Look, it's not just high debt. The question how bad it is depends on the interest rates payment and what kind of financial situation it leads to. And he got literal hyperinflation. We'll see it in numbers right now. Achieved fiscal surpluses. Yeah. So yeah, let's have a look. Maybe the references just gives the detail. Okay. Summary. Okay, so that's the GDP graph. I don't know whether you even like the GDP metric. As a crude estimate of the health of the economy, I think it's fine. And we see that the economy was in a recession when he took office, and Milei basically took it out of the recession. The economy kind of recovered. Here's the infamous hyperinflation rates, 20% per month. Yeah, when he took office, and he took it to something more reasonable. Well, it's still high. And here is this fiscal balance which you're talking about. Yeah, indeed, he just get rid of the debt. Could you imagine something like in the US? Just getting rid of the debt and achieving surplus in like, I think he did it in like less than a year. Well, trade balance, I don't know whether you consider this metric to be important for anything. Yeah, labor market indicators. Unemployment stayed approximately the same, right? And poverty declined, as was mentioned in this Twitter clip. Yeah, here, by the way, as you may notice, poverty goes up significantly when he took office because he took down the price control, and that reveals poverty. So the real decline is here, as you can see. It actually makes his policies, his overall policies look even better, right? Because that's the actual measure from here to here. Yeah, and this is a recovery of a real wage purchasing power. As you can see, it was just diving to the bottom, I guess, with hyperinflation, and then it bounced back up after Milei took office. I guess that's this brief summary of his results. Versus Trump. Trump, yeah, he added 2.25 trillion already in his first year of second term. And during COVID, he added trillions as well. It's in his big, beautiful bill. So yeah, Milei reduced that burden, Trump's policies increased. And here we could see actually the detailed breakdown, what happened there. Milei, he slashed all the subsidies, and he just cut half of the ministries, as this guy from the video mentioned, from 18 to 9. So it's a huge reduction. I don't think we could even imagine eliminating like half of departments or agencies in the US government. Now versus Trump, yeah, what he did, actually could read this in detail here. I remember looking at it in the last paragraph. So the legislation extended trillions of dollars of 2017 tax cuts that has been scheduled to expire. Remove taxes on tips, which I don't know why he needed, and reduce federal spending by an estimated 1.4 trillion, mostly from programs such as Medicaid, SNAP, and federal student loans. The law also upped other spending, largely on the military and immigration enforcement, by 325 billion, so partially compensating this. So, however, in total, the deficit increased because of the tax cuts, which makes this policy kind of, imbalanced or kind of even stupid, you would say. You're not really achieving anything if you're not cutting the spending. Yeah, so in that respect, it actually makes much more sense to be much more fiscally responsible, spend less. That, yeah, as this article also mentioned. So his policy described as a mixed bag of priorities, combining traditional Republican initiatives like tax cuts with ones that have been historically policies on the other side of the aisle, like seeking to cap credit card interest rates. Yeah, that's clearly sounds like a leftist policy, as well as this tariffs, which we'll talk about right now, I guess, or later. So yeah, as already said, that Milei slashed the amount of government workers a lot. He cut huge number of regulations, repealed rent price controls, import license and labor rigidities by Argentina rules. Yeah, the state size shrank dramatically. Trump has something similar, but it's more like more superfluous, I would say. He kind of tries to mimic it. Like, yeah, you have this weird rule, you see, 8 regulations to be cut per one new one. Pages removed from Federal Register. In the second term, he had Doge, which was supposed to, clear up some sort of fraud and abuse, but in the end, like the real impact was kind of limited. Yeah, you see, Milei achieved far deeper cuts to bureaucracy and rules. Trump focuses on targeted deregulation without equivalent state shrinkage. So it wasn't much. Yeah, inflation, we already talked about it too. Milei inherited hyperinflation. It took it to something adequate and normal. Trump had a relatively working economy. Yeah, with tariffs, he added 0.4 percentage points to CPI, with Fed recommending 2%. But again, we don't we don't agree with the Fed, right? But still, not clear how to compare this to politicians, right? One had a dysfunctional economy and make it more or less normal. One had a working one, make it slightly worse. Housing, here again, we already mentioned it. Rebuilt rent controls result in 40% reduction of inflation-adjusted rent prices. Rental supply in Buenos Aires increased by 170%. Trump hasn't done anything here. Look, AI speculates that tariffs might have indirect effect through raising construction costs, but I don't know how bad it could be. Look, the zoning laws were the major problems in the housing market. They remain in place. Nothing was done here. Now immigration. Here it's interesting. Yeah, it was a new thing to me. It turns out that Milei somewhat tightened the immigration laws as well. Here, I think I found it. Yeah, in May 2025, Milei signed a decree to tighten immigration laws in Argentina. Milei said that immigrants were bringing chaos and abuse, so basically repeating Trump's talking point, to Argentina, and ordered that the path to citizenship be restricted, with foreign nationals having to reside 2 years without interruption in Argentina and show proof of income or sufficient means, plus a clean criminal record in the home countries. Yeah, I mean, you could look at the original where it was reported. So essentially, it turned out that Argentina's immigration policy was pretty loose before that, and combined with like a broad healthcare benefits that they offer and education, it opened up some doors for abuse, like I already discussed in one of my previous videos. So he restricted immigrants' access to education and healthcare, and yeah, he also forced them to prove sufficient financial means. So he kind of trying to make it merit-based to some degree. It kind of makes sense to allow, like, while you still have the welfare state, to allow only those people who contribute to it to take from it, right? That's what he wanted. However, yeah, it's still, I would say, bad for me if I want to go there, right? As you know, US already doesn't allow me to immigrate into it, so I was really considering maybe going to Argentina. That's my only hope for the future. And now I have to reside 2 years uninterrupted to get a citizenship. But before it was just, 2 years with interruption or something like that. It isn't not really a dramatic change. I would say immigration laws in Argentina, yeah, they were loose, and Milei tightened them a little bit and still remain loose. Whereas in US, if you look what Trump did, yeah, strict enforcement, mass deportation plans, border security spending up, H-1B visa restrictions. So they were already actually insane. Those laws were already pretty insane. It is a perverted socialist immigration system where, the talented and bright people are literally not allowed. They have to prove something, they have to beg, and all sorts of asylum seekers, the poor, and the unfortunate, they just welcome and they will be given all sorts of welfare. So yeah, Trump kind of made it worse in a sense. Yeah, I don't think anything he done is kind of meaningful so far. Yeah, I don't think it will actually help anyone. Uh, I don't know how much it will reduce, brutal, crimes and how you call it, or abuse of the welfare program, because I think the numbers are kind of small. So what he's trying to achieve is, first of all, unrealistic, and he achieved it will be kind of stupid. I don't know. And that there has to be complete rethinking of US immigration system, I would say, which Trump hasn't really done. Now we are getting to the kind of most, like, like the part where they differ the most, yeah, in terms of trade. Milei liberalized trade, reduced import taxes, yeah, tax plans from 17.5% over 7.5, removed quotas, licenses, open markets, record trade surplus, and export resilience. So yeah, that's an original. I want to show you just to give you some idea how bad it was. It just was unexpectedly bad for me. Yeah, considerable foreign trade restrictions continue. In addition to the overvalued peso, the still considerable foreign trade restrictions make the international exchange of goods and services more difficult and are also proving to be a barrier for foreign investors. Imports are currently still subject to high taxes, 17.5%, which results in considerable costs for both private consumers and companies in Argentina. For example, look carefully. A normal bar of chocolate imported from Europe costs the equivalent of 8 euros. making the luxury good in Argentina 8 euros for a bar of chocolate. Whereas on the ferry to the other side of the Rio de la Plata to Uruguay, it costs only half that amount of $4 for euros. And in German supermarket, just €1. So this gives you an idea of what, tariffs can do to your country. The consequences are more serious for companies in Argentina that are dependent on imports from abroad for their production, or that have to pay for software licenses, for example. The new government has announced its intention to reduce import taxes to 7.5% by the end of the year, which is urgently needed in view of the price disadvantages. And that's not all. Yeah, look, the worst part is still ahead. While import taxes can at least be taken into account by companies in their price calculations, existing import licensing requirements continue to make economic activity in Argentina practically unpredictable. Waiting times for the approval of imports and bureaucratic customs clearance process, and even for everyday items, led to production losses and long delivery times. There is currently a shortage of plastic, for example, which means that there are even waiting time for plastic cards, such as driving licenses, to be issued. Like insane. That just literally sounds like third world country. And again, with currency conversion problems, it goes even worse. In addition, the restrictions for foreign currency transactions, with the result that foreign companies have to wait for payment for their services from their local business partners in Argentina, and therefore sometimes even forego new business opportunities. Private households are only legally allowed to exchange the equivalent of $200 per month from pesos. Yeah, so that was kind of really bad. I mean, I was thinking about going to Argentina to live there, but after I'm reading this, I just kind of develop a feeling that there's no way Milei will be able to fix all that. If something's so deeply sick with this country, I don't know how you could make it recover in any reasonable time. Yeah, so now after you witness the horrors of trade barriers yourself, just imagine what Trump tariffs could do. And yeah, look, 10-20% tariffs in Trump, right? High on China, 40%, which is where most goods are made. Aims to protect manufacturing, reduce deficit, rise revenues, but increase consumer costs. Yeah, so about the rising revenues, we already seen that, yeah, he was not able to reduce deficit like this. What he did is successfully taxed American people. Now about aims to protect manufacturing. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen because just think about the context here. The tariffs are imposed from executive orders, so it is unreliable. Whereas what's really important for manufacturing is long-term planning. Imagine I'm an investor or business owner and I see some tariffs imposed by the president, and now yeah, it becomes like temporarily beneficial to produce something in US to sell for the US market. That now I have to build a plant or something like a factory, which might take several years, right? For this capital to restructure to flow into the US. And then in the several years, maybe 3-4 years, the president gonna change. It might be a Democrat. There's high chance for that. And looking at Joe Biden's example, we see that sometimes they just repeal Trump's laws just out of spite, without even thinking about the consequences. So it's very possible that this executive order will get repealed, and then the factory, which I was just literally building for 4 years, will become unprofitable, obsolete, and irrelevant. So I don't think it's gonna work. Like what people see is like a whimsical use of power, which scares the investors off. Like I don't know, I don't think this is gonna work out well. Yeah, let's finish watching the video. I think it's worth it.
Milei has pushed the more so trade liberalization,
Exactly.
which is what a lot of y'all disagree with. Deregulation as well as privatization is something that he prioritized. Milei is not so much on the side of protectionism. Trump's economic worldview leaned heavily towards tariffs, trade wars, and industrial policy, while Milei's worldview is that markets allocate resources far better than politicians. He's also talked openly about dollarization and dismantling Argentina's central banking power. Again, a deeply libertarian position that would be radioactive here in U.S. politics. Trump never came close to that. And culturally, Milei isn't saying, trust me to wield the power better. He's saying power itself is the danger. That's a fundamentally different philosophy. Now, people will bring up the relationship between Milei and Trump or some financial backstop or cooperation between U.S. and Argentina. And sure, acknowledge it. Countries do interact. And with that recent deal that they had, Argentina paid back what is used. But that's a side note. It's not really the story. The story here is that Milei reforms come from an anti-statist worldview, not from American populism. If Trump governed anything like Milei economically, real spending cuts, real decentralization, real rollback of the state, I'd be wearing the red hat myself. I'd love for that to be true. I'd celebrate it openly. But I don't think America gets there without first, unfortunately, experiencing something close to what Argentina went through. Full-blown socialist dysfunction. Historically, that's what it takes for people to finally question the system itself instead of just arguing over who wins. So
Yeah, I agree. That's my concern as well. That America is on a bad track, and I see that no mainstream movement actually even talks about solving America's fundamental problem. It's more like about we are gonna attack the immigrants, like if it's gonna change anything. It's not. So yeah, I think America will continue to decline until the situation will get as bad as in Argentina, and then we might hope for some sort of Milei-like figure, and it's in the best case scenario.
look, if you like Trump, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you who to support or not support, but trying to claim Javier Milei's results as proof of Trump's policy is fundamentally incorrect. The primary similarity between Trump and Milei isn't policy at all, it's more in personality. They're both outsiders, they both bucked their respective political establishments, they both became symbols of frustration with the system. But where Trump has largely worked within the existing framework, Milei's entire project is about dismantling it. One is more populist, operating inside the state power. The other is more openly hostile about the state itself. And if you want to call that some sort of populism, I guess maybe. But if you're celebrating Milei because you like disruption, anti-establishment, energy, or watching entrenched elites panic, I get that. That overlap makes sense. But policy matters. And on policy, Milei is far closer to libertarianism and anarcho-capitalist ideas than associated with Trumpism. You don't have to pretend that they're the same to appreciate either one. In fact, doing that just muddies the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very good video.